Steve Harvey has spent years watching families compete on the Family Feud stage. He has seen joy, heartbreak, surprise, and every human emotion that a game show can draw out of people under bright lights. But on a May evening in 2026, a wife stood at his podium and did something so unexpected, so calculated, and so devastatingly precise that 200 people in the studio audience went completely silent for nearly 10 seconds. She did not cry. She did not scream. She did not make a scene. She simply told the truth. But she told it in a way that nobody, least of all her husband, saw coming. She wove it into the game itself, answering 3 consecutive survey questions with responses that were technically valid game answers, but were actually direct accusations aimed at the man standing 5 feet behind her. And by the time the 3rd answer landed, the entire studio understood what was happening. The wife was using Family Feud to deliver the truth she had been holding for over a year. Answer by answer, question by question, until the picture was complete and there was nowhere left for her husband to hide. There was a time when a woman who discovered her husband's betrayal had limited options. Confront him privately and risk him denying everything. Tell a friend and risk the story spreading beyond her control. Or say nothing and carry the weight alone. But when Lorraine Mosley walked onto the Family Feud stage and decided to turn the game itself into a delivery system for the truth, she invented a method that nobody had ever seen before. She played the game. She answered the questions, and inside every answer was a message that only one person in the building was meant to hear. Until the whole building heard it. If you believe that the truth always finds its way to the surface, and that sometimes the smartest way to tell it is to let it tell itself, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel right now. The way this wife uses the game to expose her husband is the most creative and devastating thing that has ever happened on Family Feud. Lorraine Mosley was 45 years old. She was from Chesapeake, Virginia, a sprawling city at the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay where military families, blue-collar workers, and small business owners formed the backbone of a community that valued hard work and straight talk. Lorraine was raised by her father, Arthur Pratt, a retired Navy chief petty officer who had served 24 years on aircraft carriers, and her mother, Gwendolyn, a school librarian who ran the Chesapeake Public Library's children's reading program for 30 years. Arthur and Gwendolyn were married for 46 years and never spent a single one of those years pretending to be something they were not. Arthur used to tell Lorraine and her 2 brothers at the dinner table, "In the Navy, we say the best strategy is the one your enemy does not see coming. But at home, the best strategy is always the truth. No one can outmaneuver honesty." Lorraine memorized both halves of that lesson. She would use both of them on the same stage. Lorraine was sharp. Not loud sharp, quiet sharp. The kind of intelligence that observed first and spoke second, that gathered information like a squirrel gathers acorns, slowly, methodically, and in quantities that only became apparent when the reserves were finally opened. She graduated from Old Dominion University with a degree in criminal justice and spent her career working as an investigator for a private insurance company, handling fraud cases. Her job was to examine claims that did not add up, to follow the trail of inconsistencies until she found the lie buried underneath them. She interviewed people who were hiding things. She analyzed documents that told one story while reality told another. She was, in the most professional and literal sense, a woman who was paid to find the truth that other people were trying to conceal. She was very good at her job. She met Marcus Mosley at a friend's housewarming party when she was 28. Marcus was 31, a regional manager for a home improvement retail chain. He oversaw 5 stores across the Hampton Roads area and was known in his company for his ability to motivate staff and increase sales numbers. He was energetic, likable, and had a natural salesman's gift for making people feel seen and valued. He focused his attention on Lorraine with an intensity that made her feel, for the first time in her adult life, like the most interesting person in a room. Lorraine, who had spent her career studying human behavior, recognized the technique. She knew it was a sales approach. But she did not care, because the man using it was also genuine, or so she believed. They married after 2 years. The ceremony was at Arthur and Gwendolyn's church, a small military chapel near the naval base where Arthur had spent his career. Arthur walked Lorraine down the aisle in his dress whites, the same uniform he had worn to his own wedding 40 years earlier. Gwendolyn sat in the front row and cried so softly that no one noticed until Lorraine's brother handed her a tissue. Marcus's vows were smooth and confident, delivered with the polish of a man who was comfortable performing in front of an audience. He said, "Lorraine, you see through everything, and I hope you always like what you see when you look at me." It was a charming line. It was also, as it turned out, a prophecy. For the first 12 years the marriage was stable. They settled in a house in Chesapeake. They had 2 children. Their daughter Autumn was now 14, a competitive swimmer with her mother's analytical mind and her grandfather Arthur's discipline. Their son Caleb was 11, creative and artistic, the kind of boy who drew elaborate fantasy worlds in notebooks and narrated entire adventures to himself while building with blocks. Lorraine continued her work in fraud investigation. Marcus was promoted multiple times and was now responsible for a larger territory that included stores across Virginia and into North Carolina. The expanded territory meant more travel, and Lorraine, whose professional life revolved around tracking inconsistencies in other people's stories, began noticing inconsistencies in her own husband's. The same kind she found in fraudulent insurance claims. Small discrepancies between what Marcus said and what the evidence showed. A store visit in Raleigh that did not appear on the company's internal scheduling system she could access through a shared corporate login. A hotel charge in a city where his company had no stores. Mileage on the car that exceeded what his reported trips would have required. Each one was minor. Each one was explainable. And each one, Lorraine knew from 15 years of fraud investigation, was a thread that, if pulled long enough, would unravel something. Lorraine pulled the threads for 14 months. She did not tell Marcus. She did not tell her family. She conducted the investigation the same way she conducted her professional cases, with patience, documentation, and an absence of emotion that would have terrified Marcus if he had known. She built a file. Hotel records obtained through the shared corporate login. Credit card charges cross-referenced with his reported schedule. Location data from the family's shared phone plan. A pattern emerged that was unmistakable to a trained investigator. Marcus was spending approximately 2 nights per week in locations that did not correspond to any legitimate work obligation. The pattern had been consistent for over a year. The evidence pointed to a single city. Durham, North Carolina, a city where Marcus's company had no stores, no warehouses, and no corporate reason to visit. Lorraine completed her investigation 8 weeks before the Family Feud taping. She knew everything, she had documentation for everything, and she had a plan for how to deliver the truth that reflected both halves of her father's lesson. The truth would be honest, but the strategy would be the one her enemy did not see coming. The Family Feud appearance was something the family had planned for months. The team was Marcus, Lorraine, Arthur, Lorraine's colleague and friend Sandra, and Marcus's younger sister Tanya. Arthur, now 73, came because his granddaughter Autumn had begged him, and because Arthur Pratt had never said no to a mission his family asked him to join. He did not know about the investigation. He did not know what Lorraine was planning. He simply put on his best shirt, boarded the plane, and stood in the family lineup the way he had stood on the deck of an aircraft carrier for 24 years, ready for whatever came next. The Mosley team was matched against the Abubakar family from Minneapolis, Minnesota, a Somali-American family of 5 whose matriarch had arrived in the United States as a refugee 30 years ago, and who introduced herself to Steve Harvey by saying, "I came to this country with nothing, and now I am on your television show, so I have already won." The audience gave her a standing ovation before the game even started. Steve was charmed by both families. During introductions, Marcus delivered his line with characteristic Polish. "Steve, this is my wife, Lorraine. 17 years of marriage. She is the sharpest person I have ever known. She works in fraud investigation, so trust me, I do not get away with anything at home." He laughed. The audience laughed. Steve laughed. Lorraine smiled. It was a flawless performance. And Marcus had no idea that the joke he had just made was about to become the most ironic sentence he had ever spoken. The game began. The first face-off went to the Mosley team. Steve read the question. We asked 100 married women's name a place your husband claims to be when you think he is somewhere else. Lorraine was up. She hit the buzzer. She looked at Steve and said, calmly and clearly, at a work conference. Number 1 answer, 39 points. The audience cheered. Lorraine looked back at Marcus and held eye contact for 1 second longer than normal. Marcus smiled. The Mosley team chose to play. The board filled with answers. Working late. At the gym. At a friend's house. The round ended with a clean sweep. High fives all around. Everything appeared normal. But Lorraine's answer had not been random. It had been the first move in a 3-part strategy. And nobody knew it yet except Lorraine and Sandra, her colleague, who had helped her plan the sequence and who was standing in the lineup with a composure that matched Lorraine's own. The second round began. Steve read the question. We asked 100 people name a city that comes to mind when you think of secret getaways. Lorraine was up for the face-off again. She hit the buzzer. She paused for 1 deliberate second, then looked at Marcus again before turning to Steve. Durham, North Carolina. It was not on the board. The audience groaned sympathetically. The other team's player gave a different answer and won the face-off. The round moved on. To most people in the studio, it was simply a wrong answer. An unusual choice perhaps, but nothing more. But Marcus had heard it. Durham. The city where Lorraine's investigation had tracked him. The city that appeared in 14 months of location data and hotel records. The city where his company had no stores. Marcus's smile flickered, just for a fraction of a second, a micro-expression that the cameras might have caught but that the audience would not have noticed. A trained fraud investigator, however, would have noticed it immediately. And Lorraine did. The third round arrived. The game was competitive. The Mosley team had won the first round and lost the second. Everything felt like a normal, fun Family Feud episode. Steve was in great form. The Abubakar family was animated and entertaining. The audience was engaged. Steve read the third question. We asked 100 married people what is the most expensive secret a husband keeps from his wife. Lorraine stepped up for the face-off 1 more time. She hit the buzzer. She did not hesitate. She did not look at the board. She turned her entire body to face Marcus, who was standing in the family lineup behind her, and she said, in a voice that was calm, measured, and absolutely devastating, a hotel room in Durham, North Carolina, that he has been booking every other Tuesday for the past 14 months under a corporate account his wife is not supposed to have access to. That is the most expensive secret, Steve, and it has been costing our family about $1,100 a month. The studio detonated. The silence came first, a 2-second vacuum where 200 brains processed what they had just heard simultaneously. Then the eruption. Gasps, shouts, hands pressed to mouths, people standing up involuntarily. The Abubakar matriarch clutched her daughter's arm. Steve Harvey's card fell from his hand and he did not pick it up. The beauty and the horror of what had just happened registered with the audience in waves. The first answer, how to work conference, had been a general accusation that sounded like a game answer. The second answer, Durham, North Carolina, had been a specific location that sounded odd, but could have been random. But the third answer, with its surgical precision, its dollar amounts, its timeline, and its revelation about the corporate account, retrospectively transformed the first 2 answers from game responses into chapters of a story. Lorraine had been building the case across 3 rounds. She had laid the breadcrumbs one at a time. She had used the game itself as the delivery mechanism for the truth. And by the time the full picture assembled, it was too late for Marcus to deny, deflect, or prepare a response. The strategy her father had taught her, the one the enemy does not see coming, had been executed flawlessly. Marcus stood in the lineup. His face had gone blank. Not angry, not panicked, blank. The expression of a man whose defensive perimeter had been breached without him ever knowing it was under attack. He looked at Lorraine with the dawning, horrified recognition that the woman he had been underestimating for 14 months had just disassembled his secret life in 3 game show answers. His sister Tanya had taken a full step away from him, her hand over her mouth. Arthur, standing at the end of the lineup in his best shirt, had gone perfectly still. His face was the face of a man who had served on aircraft carriers and had seen emergencies unfold in real time. He was assessing, processing, reading the situation with military precision. His eyes moved from Lorraine to Marcus to Steve Harvey and back to Lorraine. Then he took one step forward and placed himself directly behind his daughter. Not a word, just position. The old chief petty officer had read the battlefield and chosen his station. He was standing behind the person who needed him. Steve Harvey had not moved since his card fell. He was standing near the podium, staring at Lorraine with an expression that combined shock, admiration, and the slow realization that he had just witnessed the most strategically brilliant use of a game show format that had ever been attempted. He blinked. He looked at the card on the floor. He looked at Lorraine. Then he said, quietly, "I need to stop this game right now." Steve pulled his earpiece out, set it on the podium, and walked to center stage. He stood in the space between Lorraine and Marcus and spoke to Lorraine first. "Lorraine, I need to say this, and I need the whole world to hear it. In all my years on this stage, nobody has ever done what you just did. You did not confront your husband in a hallway. You did not throw evidence at him in the kitchen. You used my game. You answered 3 questions across 3 rounds, and each answer was a piece of a puzzle. The first piece told us where he claimed to be. The second piece told us where he actually was, and the third piece told us how much it cost. You built a case on a game show podium. 3 answers, 3 rounds, 1 truth, and you did it with the composure of a woman who investigates fraud for a living and knows that the evidence speaks louder than the voice presenting it." The audience erupted in applause. Lorraine stood at the podium, her chin level, her eyes dry. Sandra, who had known the plan, was crying quietly. Arthur had not moved from his position behind Lorraine. His hand was on her shoulder now. Then Steve turned to Marcus. "Marcus, I want to repeat something you said during introductions, because I do not think you realized how prophetic it was. You said, and I quote, 'She works in fraud investigation, so trust me, I do not get away with anything at home.' You said that, on camera, as a joke. And then your wife spent the next 45 minutes proving it true. She investigated you, Marcus, the same way she investigates insurance claims. She found the hotel bookings. She found the corporate account. She tracked the pattern. She calculated the cost. And she delivered the findings on my stage, in front of 200 people, in the form of 3 game show answers that peeled back your lie 1 layer at a time until there was nothing left." Steve stepped closer. "Let me tell you something about what just happened that I want every person watching to understand." Lorraine did not lose control. She gained it. She took the most painful truth of her life and she organized it into a strategy. She turned my game into her courtroom, and she presented the evidence in a sequence that was so precise, so methodical, and so devastating that by the time you realized what was happening, the case was already closed. That is not a woman who was blindsided by your affair, Marcus. That is a woman who has known about it for over a year and spent that entire time building the case that would end it on the biggest stage she could find." Marcus tried to speak. His voice was hoarse. "Lorraine, I do not know what to say." "You do not need to say anything," Lorraine replied. Her voice was steady, clinical, the voice she used in professional depositions. "The evidence says it for you. Hotel room charges, location data, a corporate account with bookings that do not correspond to any store visits your company has on file. I know because I accessed the scheduling system through the login you gave me 3 years ago when you asked me to help you with a quarterly report. You gave me the keys to your system, Marcus, and you forgot I had them. A fraud investigator never forgets she has access." The audience response was massive. People were on their feet. Several were shaking their heads in disbelief, not at the affair itself but at the methodology, the precision, the patience. The fact that this woman had held the truth for 14 months and had chosen to deliver it not in a single explosive moment, but in 3 carefully sequenced game show answers that built on each other like chapters in a book. Tanya, Marcus's own sister, spoke up from the lineup. Her voice was trembling. "Marcus, she knew. She has known for over a year, and she did not say a word. She just watched, and investigated, and built the case. And you never noticed. You never even suspected. Because you were too busy thinking you were the smartest person in the room. But you were not. She was. She has always been the smartest person in every room she walks into. And you married her and then forgot that. Arthur spoke for the first time. His voice was low, measured, and carried the unmistakable authority of a man who had commanded sailors for 2.5 decades. He did not address Marcus. He addressed the room. In the Navy, we train for contingencies. We prepare for the scenarios we hope never happen. My daughter did not learn that from me on purpose. She learned it by watching me. She prepared. She documented. She waited for the right moment. And she executed her strategy flawlessly. 3 answers. 3 rounds. 1 truth. That is military precision applied to a personal crisis. I am proud of her. Not because of what she exposed. Because of how she exposed it. With discipline. With evidence. With control. That is a Pratt. Steve Harvey shook his head slowly. He turned to the camera. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been doing this for a very long time. I have seen hundreds of confrontations. I have seen tears, screams, accusations, and confessions. But I have never seen what I just saw. A woman used my game to tell the truth. She did not interrupt the game. She played it. And every answer she gave was both a legitimate survey response and a piece of evidence against her own husband. She turned Family Feud into a deposition, and she did it so smoothly, so carefully, that her husband did not realize what was happening until the 3rd answer, when it was already too late. That is not just courage. That is artistry. And Lorraine Mosley, the fraud investigator from Chesapeake, Virginia, just conducted the most elegant investigation I have ever witnessed. And she did it on a game show stage. The game was never completed. Both families received their full prizes and compensation. The Abubakar matriarch found Lorraine backstage and said, "I came to this country with nothing and I built a life from scratch. You took a marriage that was falling apart and you built a case from scratch. We are the same kind of woman, the kind that builds, the kind that does not wait for someone else to fix what is broken." Lorraine held the older woman's hands and thanked her. When the episode aired 6 weeks later, it became the most analyzed and most discussed Family Feud episode in the show's modern history. The 3-answer strategy was broken down, diagrammed, and discussed by media analysts, legal commentators, and communication experts across every platform. People described it as the most methodical emotional detonation ever broadcast on television. The clip was viewed over 140 million times. But unlike other viral Family Feud moments that were driven by a single explosive revelation, this clip was shared and reshared because of its structure. Viewers watched it multiple times to catch the moment Marcus's face changed at Durham, North Carolina, the subtle shift that signaled the beginning of his realization. They watched it to appreciate the pacing, the way each answer built on the previous one, the way the full picture did not become clear until the 3rd round. Media scholars compared it to a 3-act play performed inside a game show format. The episode sparked a specific cultural conversation about what it means to be underestimated. Marcus's introductory joke about Lorraine investigating fraud became the episode's defining irony. He had told the world, on camera, that his wife was a professional at finding hidden truths, and then he had expected her not to find his. Commentators wrote about the arrogance of deception. The way some people convince themselves that the person they are lying to is not capable of seeing through them, even when that person is literally trained to do exactly that. A psychology professor wrote a widely cited article arguing that Marcus's behavior exemplified what she called domestic blind spot syndrome, the tendency of unfaithful partners to underestimate the observational abilities of the person who knows them best. Lorraine returned to Chesapeake and went back to work. She filed for divorce within 3 weeks. The documentation she had compiled over 14 months made the proceedings swift and decisive. Her attorney, who had handled hundreds of divorce cases, told a colleague that Lorraine's file was the most professionally assembled evidence package she had ever received from a non-attorney. It was organized like an insurance fraud case file, the attorney said, chronological, cross-referenced, annotated. She even included a summary page with key findings. I have worked with investigators who produce less thorough work. Arthur gave one interview after the episode aired. He sat on the front porch of his house in Chesapeake, The same porch he had sat on for 30 years, and said, "I taught my daughter two things. The truth is always the best strategy, and the best strategy is the one your enemy does not see coming." She used both of them on the same night. 3 game show answers. That was her operation, and she executed it with a precision that would have earned commendations in the Navy. I am retired now. I do not give commendations anymore, but if I could, my daughter would receive one, for courage under fire, because that stage was her battlefield, and she held her position. Gwendolyn, Lorraine's mother, the retired librarian, gave a separate interview. She said, "My daughter has been reading since she was 4 years old. She reads everything: books, people, numbers, patterns. When she told me what Marcus had done, I was not surprised that he had done it. I was surprised that he thought she would not find out. You do not lie to a woman who reads everything. She will read the lie too, and then she will read you the verdict." Sandra, Lorraine's colleague and friend who had helped plan the 3-answer strategy, gave one interview. She said, "We sat at her kitchen table for 3 evenings working out which questions were likely to appear on Family Feud and how to match the evidence to possible survey prompts." Lorraine treated it like a case. She said, "If they ask about places, I give them Durham. If they ask about secrets, I give them the hotel. If they ask about excuses, I give them the work conference." She had contingencies for 8 different question categories. In the end, the show gave her 3 questions that fit 3 of her prepared scenarios perfectly. She told me afterward that she had been nervous the questions would not line up. But they did. And she was ready. Marcus left the family home within a month. He did not make a public statement. People close to the family said the aspect that affected him most deeply was not the public exposure, but the realization that Lorraine had known for 14 months and had given no sign. 14 months of sitting across from her at the dinner table, 14 months of kissing her goodbye in the morning, 14 months of living inside the marriage he was betraying, and she had known the entire time. She had watched him lie with the trained eye of a fraud investigator and had documented every inconsistency without ever letting him see the file. That was what haunted him, not the stage, not the cameras. The 14 months of perfect composure from a woman who had already found the truth and was simply waiting for the right moment to present it. Autumn, Lorraine's 14-year-old daughter, the competitive swimmer with her mother's analytical mind, told Lorraine something a few weeks after the episode aired that Lorraine said defined the legacy she wanted to leave for her children. Autumn said, "Mom, you did not yell. You did not cry. You just answered the questions, and every answer was the truth. You showed me that the truth does not have to be loud. It just has to be accurate." Lorraine held her daughter and said, "That is exactly right, baby. The truth does not have to be loud. It just has to be accurate. And it has to be delivered at the right time in the right place by someone who is not afraid to say it." 1 year later, Family Feud invited Lorraine back for a special update. She walked onto the stage to a standing ovation that lasted over 90 seconds. She wore a tailored black blazer and a silver pin in the shape of a magnifying glass that Autumn had given her for Mother's Day, engraved on the back with the words, "She reads everything." Beside her, in the front row, sat Arthur in a crisp white shirt and Gwendolyn with a book in her lap, because Gwendolyn always had a book in her lap. Steve hugged her and asked how she was doing. Lorraine smiled, a calm, complete, earned smile. "Steve, I am doing what I have always done. I am reading, I am investigating. I am raising 2 children who know that the truth matters more than comfort." Autumn broke a swimming record last month and Caleb drew me a picture of a detective that he says is me, but with a cape. "My father still calls me every Sunday at 0800 hours because he is Navy and he will never not be Navy. My mother sends me books in the mail with passages highlighted, and I go to work every day and I find the truth that people are trying to hide. That is my life now, and every part of it is transparent. No hidden accounts, no unexplained trips, no corporate logins that lead to secrets. Just a clean file, and a clean file, Steve, is the most beautiful thing a fraud investigator can have." Steve shook his head. "Lorraine Mosley, you used my game to deliver the truth. 3 answers, 3 rounds, 1 case. You turned Family Feud into a courtroom, and you did not even need a lawyer. You just needed the survey to ask the right questions. And it did. And you were ready. Your daddy taught you 2 things. The truth is always the best strategy, and the best strategy is the one they do not see coming. You honored both lessons on my stage, and I have a feeling Arthur Pratt is sitting in that front row right now with the same expression he had on the deck of an aircraft carrier. Proud, steady, and not one bit surprised, because he raised you, and he knew exactly what you were capable of. Arthur in the front row did not clap, he did not cheer, he sat with his back straight, his hands on his knees, and he nodded once, a single, firm, military nod. The nod of a commanding officer acknowledging a mission completed with excellence. It was the highest praise Arthur Pratt had ever given, and his daughter, standing on that stage in her black blazer and her magnifying glass pin, saw it. She nodded back, and in that exchange, a 74-year-old Navy veteran and his 46-year-old fraud investigator daughter said everything that needed to be said without uttering a single word. Mission accomplished, truth delivered, case closed. If this story reminded you that the truth does not need to be loud to be devastating, that patience and preparation are the ultimate weapons against deception, and that underestimating the person who knows you best is the most dangerous mistake a liar can make, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel and turn on that notification bell so you never miss another powerful story. We bring you the most incredible and emotional Family Feud moments every single week. Real families, real investigations, and real truth. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.